Hey guys, it's the Melblade 5, and welcome to my response to Game Theory's Link is Dead in Majora's Mask theory. This theory states that Link died at the beginning of the game, and the entire game is about Link being stuck in purgatory, and him having to accept his death and move on to the afterlife. Now this theory is kind of an interesting topic for me, because when I first saw this, I didn't have any problems with this theory. But over time, I've started to notice that there are actually a lot of flaws with this theory. Before we get started, I want to say that I have nothing against MapPads. All I'm doing is just showing the problems with this theory. And also, tons of game theory fans are saying this is true. Instead of saying, there's a theory that Link could be dead in Majora's Mask, they say, Link is dead in Majora's Mask! So if I come across as serious in this video, that's why. And just before I get started, I want to give a special thanks to a YouTube user known as The One for some of the counter-arguments in this video. But now, let's get to the theory. Now, the first piece of evidence in this theory is that all the areas in Termina represent the 5 stages of death in the Kubler-Ross model of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. There's a big problem with this piece of evidence, but I'll explain it as I go along the evidence for each stage. The evidence for denial is that the people of Clocktown are in denial and don't think the moon will fall. Not all of them are in denial. There are people who think the moon will fall. There's an argument in the mayor's office between proceeding with the carnival or evacuating the town. And on the night of the 3rd day, some of the carpenters that were in denial flee Clocktown. Plus, Link isn't in denial at all. He knows the moon is going to fall. The objective of the game is to stop the moon from falling. If Link was in denial, then he wouldn't bother trying to stop the moon. The evidence for anger is that the Deku King punishes a monkey for supposedly kidnapping the Deku Princess, when the monkey is actually innocent. The problem with this is that the Deku King is angry, not Link. The evidence for bargaining is Darmani, the Goron hero who died trying to reach Snowfall Temple, who bargains with Link to try and have Link bring him back to life or extend his life long enough to save the Gorons of Goron Village. But once again, Darmani is the one bargaining, not Link. I think you're starting to see the problem with this evidence. The evidence for depression is that Darmani gets depressed when Link can't bring him back to life, and Lulu, the Zora who's had her eggs stolen by Gerudo pirates, just stands there, not saying anything, and just stares out into the sea. Darmani and Lulu are depressed, not Link. You could argue that Link feels sad for them, but there isn't any proof, as Link doesn't show any expressions when he's not in a cutscene or taking damage. And finally, the evidence for acceptance. Sharp the Composer Ghost, who comes to terms with his mistreatment of his brother, which doesn't really have anything to do with accepting death, the Garo Master, who only accepts death on his own terms, which is him accepting death and not Link, and the Stone Tower Temple, which is supposedly Link climbing to the heavens and achieving enlightenment because the item of the dungeon is the light arrows. If Link was climbing to the heavens and achieving enlightenment, then why doesn't the game end when he gets the light arrows? If the light arrows were Link being enlightened and accepting his death, then the game should end there, as Link would move on to the afterlife. But no, there's still the rest of the dungeon, the inside of the moon, and the final boss. Now, you've probably figured out the big problem with this evidence. The NPCs are experiencing these stages, not Link. Link would have to be experiencing these stages if he was dead. Granted, Link is a side protagonist, but they could show this through other means, such as having Tato talk for Link, if this was the case. It's more like the NPCs in the land of Termina is dying, instead of Link, which makes sense as the moon is going to crash into it. This would also explain why it's called Termina, which is one letter away from terminal, which is also another piece of evidence that MapPad uses. The next piece of evidence, which is that Link died at the beginning of the game because the way he entered Termina was by falling down a tree. The first point to back this up is that you ask how Link can end up in another country, which has a sky, meaning that it isn't underground, and you ask, where is this place supposed to be located? Well, MapPad, if you look in the Hyrule Historia, you'll see that Termina is actually a parallel universe. A parallel universe, for any of you that have not seen the Parallel Universe episode of Futurama, is another universe that has a lot of similarities to another universe. This explains why the characters in Majora's Mask resemble characters from Ocarina of Time, and most characters from Ocarina of Time have Terminian counterparts. That twisted hallway that Link walks through at the beginning of the game is actually the waypoint between Hyrule and Termina. The next piece of evidence is that Link would have died from the fall because fall damage is quote-unquote taken very seriously in 3D Zelda games. Then how do you explain Link's massive drop in the Fire Temple in Ocarina of Time where he takes no damage? And the warden showed that in one of Peanut Butter Gamer's Ocarina of Time hack videos, where he makes Epona Giant, the maximum amount of damage that Link can take from fall damage is 1 heart. In Majora's Mask, you started with 3 hearts, so Link would have survived the fall. Also, in Majora's Mask, the Deku Flowers that Deku Link uses to fly prevent Link from taking fall damage if he lands on one, no matter how long the fall is. And what does Link land on when he falls down the hole? A Deku Flower, meaning that Link would not have taken any damage from the fall. The next piece of evidence is how does Epona survive the fall and Skull Kid manage to get her to Romani Ranch in time for him to transform Link and float all Magneto-like? I found this point very stupid. Majora's Mask grants the wearer dark magic. You can clearly see this with how Skull Kid floats, transforms Link into a Deku Scrub, curses people, and creates a moon with a face to crash into Termina. So it's safe to assume that he teleported her to Romani Ranch, and teleportation isn't an impossibility in Zelda games, as characters such as Zant and Girahim can teleport. Now the next piece of evidence is the Elegy of Emptiness, a song that lets Link create a statue of himself, or his mask transformations. All of the masks lets Link assume the form of a character that has died. So MatPat says that because the only masks that let you create statues are the ones of dead people, and Link has a statue, he should be dead. No, he's not. This actually goes against the theory. Look at the mask transformation statues, and look at Link's statue. Notice the difference? The mask transformation statues don't have pupils, which symbolizes they are dead, but Link's statue has pupils, meaning he isn't dead. The next piece of evidence, which is the Hero Shade from Twilight Princess, which takes place after Majora's Mask. The Hero Shade is actually Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Now you claim that the Hero Shade is a Stalfos, which is incorrect. Hyrule Historia states that the Hero Shade is actually a spirit, not a Stalfos, and this was reflected in his design as the only part of his body that resembled a skeleton is his face. The rest of his body that we can see from the areas without armor are transparent. Also, look at the Hero Shade and compare him to the Stalfos' designs in Twilight Princess. They're very different. You also claim that because people who get lost in the Lost Woods become the Stalfos, so Link must have gotten lost in the Lost Woods because he died and became a Stalfos. As I just showed, the Hero Shade is not a Stalfos, but in Majora's Mask, Link is a child, and only adults become Stalfos if they get lost in the Lost Woods. If Link died, he would have become a Skull Kid, because children that get lost in Lost Woods become Skull Children. Also, in Twilight Princess, there's proof that Majora's Mask Link didn't die. In Twilight Princess, it's mentioned several times that the hero's blood runs through Link's veins, meaning that Twilight Princess Link is a blood descendant of Majora's Mask Link. And Majora's Mask Link would have had to have grown up in order to have children. And in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Link never has any sexual interactions with any of the characters that had feelings for him. And now for the final piece of evidence. The evidence that the Happy Mask Salesman's line, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" plays whenever the moon crashes into Termina, and MatPat asks, why would Nintendo choose to use that particular line at that particular instance? MatPat, have you ever heard of someone's life flashing before their eyes before they die? It's entirely possible that Link's life could be flashing before his eyes before he dies from the moon falling, not canonically, and flashes to that phrase because it was the first phrase that Link hears when he enters Termina. So that brings us to the end of this theory, and as I've shown, Link is definitely, without a doubt, alive in Majora's Mask. But before I end this video, I want to debunk one more Zelda-related theory. The moon in Majora's Mask is not the real moon. It's a fake moon created by Majora. That's why it has a face, and why when it disappears at the end of the game, the ocean tides don't get messed up. So the Link's quest, this pointless theory, has also been debunked. Anyway, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on my next response video.